I'm Lori. I'm a certified neurodiverse couples therapist, and I'm here today to share with you one of my favorite tools that I teach to many of my couples, and that tool is called zones of regulation. I apologize in advance if you're hearing some strange noises in the background. There's some pretty gnarly construction going on near my office today, so hopefully that's not too distracting for you. So, zones of regulation is a really great tool. I did not come up with it. I'll give credit in the description of this video for the website where you can learn more about this concept and the history behind who came up with it and how it's been developed. But basically, the idea is that we can understand and communicate about our feelings when we think about how our nervous system is doing from a perspective of how regulated or dysregulated is our nervous system. And one of the most common things that neurodiverse couples struggle with is understanding where each person's coming from emotionally. There's often huge differences in how emotions are experienced internally, as well as big differences in how emotions come across externally, both in terms of nonverbal signals and tone of voice, but also even language can be used really differently with different neurotypes. So there's often mix-ups that happen. Maybe you've experienced this in your own relationship. There's often these mix-ups that happen where there's a misinterpretation of the other partner's emotional state, or maybe your own emotional state has been misinterpreted by your partner. And that can kind of lead folks down a spiral where people become more frustrated with each other, less able to communicate effectively, feeling like just more disconnected, more frustrated with each other. And none of that is any fun at all. So one of the best tools that I found to help couples communicate across neurological differences, no matter what's going on emotionally, is this zones of regulation tool. So hopefully I've given you enough of a lead in to help you see why you might need this tool in your relationship. So it's pretty simple. There's only 4 zones to remember, and I'm going to link a visual that you can take a look at if you're a visual person so that you can see each of these. But there's 4 zones, and each one corresponds with a color. The 4 colors are green, yellow, red, and blue. And so each one of those zones, each one of those colors corresponds to how your nervous system is doing. And by that we mean kind of how are you doing in terms of your ability to regulate, to function, to make intentional choices, all those kinds of things. So let me give you a little bit more description about each zone, and I promise this will make more sense as we keep going. So the first zone that I'm going to start with is the green zone. And I want to say none of these zones are good or bad. There's no judgment here. As human beings, all of us spend some time in each of these 4 zones. But what they can do is they can help us realize what we need and what we're able to do or what's going to work best for us. It's really just a tool for identifying how you're doing and identifying what choices you might want to make as a result of that. So when we talk about the green zone, green corresponds with go. So when your nervous system is in a green state, you are calm, you're collected, but you've also got enough energy and enough focus that you can tackle something that you want to be doing. So green in many ways means like ready to go, ready to do something that might be productive, that might take some particular kind of like focus and intention. But green also can just mean like laid back, relaxing, content, calm, all those things. So think about a time recently where you felt like, okay, I'm really like in a zone, I'm getting some things done, I feel good about myself. That was probably a green zone. And just kind of think about how that maybe felt in your body, how that felt mentally, and just notice that for a minute. Okay, so from the green zone, we're actually going to talk about what happens when our nervous system shuts down. And that's when we move into what we call the blue zone. So we might be in blue when we're tired, when we're sick, when we're super sad, when we're kind of depressed or sluggish. That's kind of when your nervous system is like going into hibernation. That's that. I just want to kind of crawl in bed and maybe eat a bag of potato chips and watch some really trashy television. That's kind of a blue zone experience. And so when we're in the blue zone, that's a good indicator that maybe we need some rest. We need some relaxation, right? We may need some time to be alone, to be less stimulated, to give our nervous system some time to like regroup and kind of get back online and get revved up again. So now you can see green is like nervous system's online, ready to go. Blue is like nervous system is maybe a little bit overstimulated, overwhelmed, and it's slowing down and it needs some space. It's not a good time to be like trying to force yourself to tackle difficult things. So then if we move the opposite direction, we start to think about when our nervous system gets like revved up instead of shutting down. So from green, kind of in this baseline, ready to go state, we can move to yellow. And in yellow, we're like starting to get a little bit keyed up. We're not quite as slow or intentional or planful about how we're going through the world. We might be feeling nervous, worried, a little bit overwhelmed, kind of scared. We could even be feeling a little bit silly. Like we might be kind of revved up in this way that's, or we're playful and we're maybe joking or being silly, but it's fun. It can be a fun state to be in, as well as it can be a state of some stress. But it's just like things are getting a little looser internally, and maybe your body's feeling a little tighter, a little more keyed up than when you're in that green zone. Now, yellow is still a place where you can get some things done, like depending on your coping skills and how you channel things. But yellow is also kind of a good time to try to regroup and figure out, like, what do I need to feel more regulated? Like, what can I do for myself here that's going to feel good to me, that might soothe me, that might help my nervous system calm down a bit? And again, it's not that yellow's bad. Like, yellow can be good, and sometimes yellow is really appropriate for what's happening in our lives. But we just need to recognize that that's a moment where our capacity, especially our capacity for like great communication, for great listening, for empathy and compassion for our partner, even our capacity for like self-awareness, all those things are starting to diminish a little bit when we're in the yellow zone. Now, if we get even more keyed up, we're moving into the red zone. And that's not just like getting dysregulated. That's like we're all the way to dysregulated. We've lost control of our emotions. We've probably lost some control of our body, control of our words. So this could be like really mad. This could be a state of rage. It could also be a state of panic, of intense fear. But again, it could be like just off the walls, punchy, having like a great time, but totally boundaryless, like losing awareness of other people in the space and how they're impacted by the like really fun time you're having. So red zone is, again, it's for sure a moment of like stop, right? Let's stop and take care of ourselves so that we have what we need to be able to feel like we're online, like we've got what we need to really tackle the moment, or to tackle the things that are important to us, or just to do the things we enjoy. All of that it can be challenging in that red zone. Now, something else I want to say about this red zone is, again, this isn't bad. Everybody's here sometimes. But it is important to be aware of, like, when I'm in the red zone, that is not a time to be engaging with my partner. And if my partner's in the red zone, that is not a good time for me to be engaging with them. We are not online. We're not ready. It's a time for everybody to care for themselves. And the more you can have some conversation in advance, or at times where nobody's in the red zone, the more you can maybe make some plans for how you can be intentional about how you treat yourself or how you treat each other. So now I'm already starting to segue into what I want to say about these zones. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a window into what each of these 4 zones are and how you can begin to recognize them in yourself. You might also be able to recognize them in your partner to some degree, but it's really important to try not to make assumptions about that. So let's talk a little bit about how you can use these zones for yourself and for your mixed neurotype or neurodiverse relationship. So for yourself, the main, one of the best places to start with these zones is, like I said, just kind of looking back on some recent experiences and seeing, can I find a time in the last week where I felt like I was in green and where I was in blue and where I was in yellow and maybe where I was in red, and just start to notice, like, what are the kinds of thoughts, what are the kinds of bodily sensations that might be indicators to you that you can connect with each of those zones. So that's step one. And honestly, even that can be quite a bit of work. That takes some effort to really develop that kind of self-awareness. But the next thing to think about with these zones is to think about, how do I want to treat myself? What do I want to do for myself when I'm in each of these 4 zones? Like when I'm in blue, what are some go-to ways that I can relax, rest, rejuvenate? When I'm in yellow, what are some ways I can start to calm myself down? When I'm in red, what can I do to really make sure that other people aren't experiencing me in a super dysregulated state? And also, how can I do something good for myself in that state? And like when I'm in green, what are the priorities that I want to make time for? We don't want to just say green is only for tackling your to-do list. I realize I use the word tackle every time I talk about the green zone. I don't know what that's about. Just ignore that. But green can also mean, like, this is a good time for me to do something good for myself. Like maybe this is a time to journal, or a time to like take a walk when my head's really clear. And it doesn't need to be, this is a time to be quote unquote like productive. Like I said, in addition to signaling, like, this might be a time to do some things that are important to me, this might be a good window of time to really make movement toward some things. One of the things you might make movement toward in the green zone is having a conversation with your partner that feels like it might be difficult for you or difficult for them. Or even just making some time and space to connect in a really positive way with them. So that's how you can kind of use it for yourself, right? Is kind of thinking about what choices correspond with each of those zones that would be helpful, but also that you can access readily enough. We don't want to expect to be, writing a thesis when we're in the red zone, or we don't want to be overly ambitious with what we think we should be doing or can be doing. We want to kind of right size our expectations and also hold some acceptance for ourselves that, like, we're going to be in each of these zones some of the time. And that's okay. That's part of, again, being human. Okay. So how can you start to use this in your relationship with a partner? So it would be great if you both saw this video, if you both took a little time to learn something about zones of regulation, and if you were both doing those self-awareness steps that I talked about, recognizing your zones, having some tools, some plans in place for what you'd like to do in each of those zones. But there's also some other ways that then from there you can kind of build in some communication with each other. So for example, you could say, I'm in the red zone. Now's not a good time to talk. Can I come back to you tomorrow about this issue, right? So you could communicate about what state you're in and make an ask from your partner as a result of that. So it could also be like, I'm in blue today. I really would love to just like cuddle in bed with you and watch our favorite show. It could also be, I'm in green. Like, I'd love for us to do something together. What sounds good to you? I feel really open and really ready to spend some quality time with you, right? So you might be able to use these zones to, again, say something about where you're at and what you'd like to offer your partner, or what you'd like your partner to offer you. And then the other way you could use this, again, this only really works if both of you have learned about zones of regulation, is to check in with your partner about where they're at. So if you're noticing something and you're starting to make an interpretation about it, checking that out, right? Hey, I'm reading something into your tone of voice, your body language. I just want to check in with you, like, which zone would you say you're in right now, so that I can know what place you're coming from right now, right? Or you could just use it as like a regular check-in, like, hey, coming home from work or coming home from whatever, what zone do you feel like you're in right now? And just having that be an open kind of daily conversation about where each of you at and how can you be intentional about supporting each other and coordinating with each other within that. Finally, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I'm going to wrap us up here with kind of a final option too, is to use these zones of regulation to look back on an experience in your relationship. So in particular, if there was something where a conversation or an interaction kind of got off the rails, I like to call these speed bumps. So if there was kind of a speed bump, but you're past it now and you're starting to kind of come back together and you're both pretty calm and you're in a place where you're kind of talking about what happened, it can be really helpful to ask each other, what zone were you in during that interaction? And to kind of look back on it and notice, what zone were each of you in? And okay, kind of given that, what are things we might want to learn about how we could do this differently next time? That's quite a bit that I just threw at you today. All of these are just some options, some ways that you can kind of take this tool and make it your own and start to build it into, like I said, both your self-awareness, but also your vocabulary that you can use with your partner as a way to better understand each other and a way to better ask for your needs to be met and a better way to make sure you meet your partner's needs and that you work together as a team around whatever's happening in life and whatever emotional states that you might be in.